Welcome to today's video where we are teaching our dogs a release cue. Now, a release cue is something you tell your dog that means they are basically no longer under your command. So they can go be a dog, do whatever they want, go get a drink of water, go lay down somewhere, go play in the yard, do whatever, because I'm no longer training you and I no longer require your attention. So I use my release cue when it comes to when my dogs are waiting at doorways and they're waiting at my backyard. If I'm releasing them into the backyard, I use my release cue. When I ask my dogs to wait at their food bowls, I will release them with their release cue to their food bowls. If I have guests over and my dogs are holding their boundary, whenever they have calmed down, regained themselves, regained some composure, and everything is calmer, I will release them off the boundary to come greet the guests or do whatever they want. So I use my release cue in a lot of ways around my daily life, really. Hi guys, my name is Madeline and I have been a dog trainer for over half a decade now. I specialize in training pet dogs, but I am working on expanding it to service dogs as well. And I just really, really love watching the progress and watching it just click in both the owner and the dog's mind. Because when everyone understands, then it becomes so much easier to teach and learn, and it becomes more fun too. That's one of the biggest things, is if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. So to add our release cue, I want to make sure our dog, number one, has value for the boundary. That is probably the most important part, because if my dog has no value for this boundary, has no value for any type of bed, then it's more difficult for me to be able to teach a release cue. So if you have not done any boundary training with your dogs, go check out level 1. That'll be where you start, and then go to level 2 and come back to level 3 whenever you're ready. So level 2 of the boundary is adding in a cue to go to your boundary, and also we're building our recall in level 2. So I'm adding a cue to send to boundary, and then I'm recalling from boundary. So in both of those instances, I want my dog's full attention. We are still training. We are still working, I guess I should say. And so therefore, I need them to listen to me at all times. And that's not always the case when I am releasing my dog from their boundary. Sometimes I just want to release them before I forget or do something else, and then they let themselves come off. By adding a release cue, we are also able to tell our dogs, okay, when I tell you to go to your boundary, you have to stay on until you either hear your name or you hear your release cue. So it's another way for me to prove or basically ensure that my dog knows their value for his boundary. And I haven't cued Atlas to do anything just yet, so I don't have anything to fix because I haven't told him to do anything. He's just been here with me. So when we're adding our release cue, we can do one of two things. If you don't have a solid cue for your boundary just yet, we're not going to use a cue. If you do have a solid cue, you can use it. I'm going to show you both ways. So the first way is without a solid cue. If your dog does not listen to you every time you ask them to go to their boundary, then we're going to use our body language. So I'm going to use my body language and just stare at the boundary and wait for my dog to, yes, get on the boundary. Then I'm going to give them their marker word, reach for my treat, and deliver. Remember, those are 3 separate steps. If you need help with your marker word or you don't know what those 3 steps are, I will link in the description a video for that as well. So I have my dog on my boundary. Then I'm going to give my release cue and throw a treat afterwards. My release cue is going to be free. So I'm going to say free and then throw a treat afterwards. You could tell, since Atlas has done this before, he started moving before I even threw the treat, which is honestly, that's perfect. That's everything we want, because it means that he knows what the release cue means. It means he knows that if he hears that word specifically, he can get off his boundary and go do his thing. Free. Just like that. And then from there, I'm going to, yes, use my body language to get him back on his boundary. And if he were to come off the boundary, I can put him back on with my no because he didn't hear the release cue. So I'm going to try to get him to break again. No, climb. Yes. I added my cue. I shouldn't have. So let me try one more time. No. Good. The other thing is, if we have to say no, then all treats are gone. We're done. If I have to fix you, I'm not going to reward you for fixing you, doing all the work myself. Now, if I were to wiggle my fingers and Atlas stays, yes, I'm going to mark that and reward it for staying on the boundary. So you can use your marker word if you want for the release cue, but you don't have to. A lot's going on already, and sometimes adding a marker word in can muddy things up. So I'm going to get him back on his boundary, free, and then throw my treat. Back on his boundary, yes, reward, free, and then throw his treat. So if you have a verbal cue for your boundaries, then this is where we can kind of play almost a back and forth game with it. So I'm going to ask Atlas, climb. It's going to go to his climb, and I'm going to feed the bed every time he goes to his climb. And then I'm going to give my release word, no, climb. I'll give my release word and then throw the food, just like we were in the last game. If exactly what happened just happened, then I'm just going to give my no reward marker, which is just a very complicated way of saying, oops, you messed up. You're not going to get a reward this time, but I am going to fix you. So I used my body language. I might have said climb as well, but I got my no in there. So if he were to break, I would say no, climb, and use my body language to get him back in. If you have a collar grab, you can use the collar grab to get them back on the boundary as well. Atlas is very fast, so I don't need to use that. But if your dog is a little slower, maybe still learning, you can use your collar grab to guide them back to their boundary. Good job. All right, free, and then throw. Climb. Yes. I'm going to have to put a blanket or something on there. You're slipping too much for me. Free. You're too fast. Climb. So then you're doing a small variation of the orientation game where instead of throwing the piece of food out and then calling their name, we are giving them direction before we throw the piece of food out. So in this case, I'm going to give him a direction of releasing him from his boundary, and then I'm going to throw the treat. Free. And then throw the treat. Then when he picks it up and turns back to me, I'm going to say climb. He's going to go to his climb, and I'm going to put the treat. Ideally on the climb, if it wouldn't roll off. That's another thing, is if the treat comes off the climb and they follow the treat, that's where I'm going to take the blame for that. I messed up, and I'm just going to get you back on your boundary. I'm not going to reward you for getting back on, but I'm also not going to essentially punish you for getting off because you were following a reward that I was giving you. Hopefully that makes sense. Free. Climb. Good. One thing I will say is if you have a dog who is predicting that right after you cue them on their boundary that they are going to get right back off, that's where you're going to have to add in some duration, which is our level 4, and we're going to talk about that a lot in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, comment, all of that fun stuff. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comment box down below. I'm more than happy to help you guys out. I hope you have a great day, guys. Keep on training.